Still, oh, there we go. Søren, it is so wonderful to have you join us today. Søren has been a good friend to both the Academy and now to the Village, and has a very unique perspective. And we thought it would be very helpful if we had got a chance to hear from Søren. Let me give you a little bit of background on Søren. Søren Simonsen is the executive director of the Jordan River Commission. He's been an urban planner, an architect, an educator, a community builder, and a social entrepreneur. Over the past 3 decades, including 17 years of public service as an appointed and elected official, he has worked to create sustainable places and livable communities in Utah and the West. As an accomplished architect with many awards, and also spent time on the Salt Lake City Council for 2 terms. And so really has a great understanding of Salt Lake Valley, and many of the initiatives and designs that are trying to make life a better place here in the Valley. So we so appreciate you taking a minute and for your continued friendship and support, Søren. Let's start off with, tell us, as executive director of the Jordan River Commission, what is your objective? What are you trying to accomplish with the Jordan River Commission?
Thanks, Tim. Great question. It's great to be with you. Thank you for the invitation. So the Jordan River Commission is still a relatively new organization. It's been around since 2010, and the commission was organized basically as a cooperation entity, where specifically a subdivision of the state, which allows for different government organizations to come together to do things that they may not be able to do on their own. In the case of the Jordan River, which spans 3 counties, it flows from Utah Lake, which is the major tributary, north through Utah County, then Salt Lake County, and into Davis County before it empties into the Great Salt Lake in the area of Farmington Bay. There are 16 cities that touch the Jordan River. There are a number of utility districts and transportation organizations that have various jurisdiction in addition to cities and counties, as well as state and federal agencies. We estimate there's about 40 different organizations that all have some regulatory oversight of the Jordan River in some fashion, whether it's parks and recreation or open space management or flood control or wildlife and habitat considerations. There are a lot of different players. And so this organization was created to basically bring together all of these partners to do things together to improve the Jordan River and its surrounding environment. We're guided by a document called the Blueprint Jordan River, which was created by Envision Utah originally in 2008. And that led to the creation of this entity as kind of a coordinating agency to help implement that vision for the Jordan River. We just updated and adopted a new Blueprint Jordan River this spring, and that now gives us kind of our marching orders, if you will, for the next decade and beyond as to where we might focus our attention.
I would imagine over the years where no one really had ownership over the Jordan River, that it's been neglected and abused and many times forgotten about. And have you seen progress in what's happening in many parts of the Jordan River?
Yeah, being that there's so many different agencies, some have done really remarkable work. Cities like Salt Lake and Murray have really embraced the river. It flows through those communities, and they've really seen it as a great asset. On the other hand, for many cities like South Salt Lake and West Valley or Riverton and Draper, it's kind of a boundary, and sometimes boundaries can be a little bit forgotten. And so there has been a lot of work that's gone into bringing all of these entities together to try and coordinate. We've seen lots of improvements. This year marks the 50th anniversary of the Clean Water Act, which was a federal program to address point source pollutants like factories and raw sewage and all kinds of pollutants. That's had remarkable benefit on the Jordan River. But there's a lot of non-point source pollutants that also affect water quality in the river. Pretty much every storm drain in the Salt Lake Valley drains either directly or indirectly through a tributary or a canal into the Jordan River. And so there's a lot of impacts that come just from urbanization of the area. And so this Jordan River Commission has really come together to bring a partnership of many different organizations. And not everybody bought into the vision initially, and it took about 10 years from the original blueprint being created to really bring that cooperation of many different organizations together. The last entity to join the Jordan River Commission was the city of Murray, which surprisingly for a lot of people, because they have done so much to create and enhance parks and open space, really have led the entire region in developing park space. But they kind of said, well, we've done our part. We want everybody else to kind of come to where we are. But they've also found that there's just great outcomes that come from participating and cooperating with other entities on a regional resource like the Jordan River and the parkway that's developing around it. So we're happy to have this great partnership.
So as a resident of Salt Lake Valley, how might I be able to benefit from the work that the commission has been doing on the Jordan River? How could I interact with the river?
There are many recreation opportunities. We estimate that about half of the population of the state, which is around 3.5 million now, about half of that population lives within about a 15-minute drive of the Jordan River across that really populated Wasatch Front area. So, just enjoying parks and open space, golf courses, to natural areas. There's all kinds of recreation opportunities around the Jordan River. And the trail that has been developed, which was completed in late 2017, that now connects all the way from Utah Lake to the Great Salt Lake. And a lot of new trail connections that help make that part of a regional recreation system. In fact, just in this last month, ground was broken for Parley's Trail, parts of which have been around for a long time, that connect Mill Creek and Salt Lake and South Salt Lake. The last piece of that parkway or that trail from 9th West to the Jordan River is a very complicated one because it has to cross over the big maintenance rail yard for the track system, which is just off 900 West between 9th West and the Jordan River. So that's a very complicated connection to make. And thanks to a lot of different partners, county and city and state and federal partners, we just broke ground to complete that section of trail. And there's many similar kinds of projects happening through the Innovation District, which is that technology area that's emerging in Lehigh City. When they rebuilt the intersection of I-15 and the Timpanogos Highway, it was really challenging for people to connect between the Murdoch Canal in Utah County and the Jordan River Parkway Trail. And that whole reconstruction included recently a grade separated trail, so you can now get through that freeway interchange without having to go through dangerous crossings and crosswalks and things like that. So there's just really incredible work that's been happening through this partnership to connect communities with recreational trails that also are now becoming great commuter trails as well, and lots of parks and open space. So it's just incredible amenity. I might also mention, in addition to the bike and walking path, there's also a lot of work that's happening right now to create better access to the river itself. We have, over the last year, with various partners and support from the state and local and county governments, completed about 8 new launches into the Jordan River to put in and take out a canoe or a kayak or a raft or an inner tube or however you want to float the river. And that's opening up lots of new opportunities as well. And a lot of people are discovering the river in their own backyard that they didn't even know really existed or was very accessible with some of these new access points. So the river trail has been a great addition as well. That's still being developed as we speak.
Well, what a tremendous asset, and what a great work that you're doing to develop and protect and make this something valuable for generations to come.
Yeah, we're excited and a lot of partners.
We you you know that you wouldn't think that an organization that's focused on taking care of a river and coordinating with all these different um, agencies and municipalities would have a very strong connection to many of the issues surrounding homelessness. How does your agency, how does your organization intersect with the issues of homelessness? How does that become part of what you're looking at?
That's a great question, and probably for anybody that's spent much time at the Jordan River Parkway, they've observed over the last decade a lot of changes with regard to homelessness, and particularly the unsheltered individuals, many of whom are struggling with addiction and mental illness, and a lot of factors that have become causes for homelessness in their lives. Over the last decade, we've seen, probably for a lot of reasons, the result of a lot of people coming home from um, war and service in the armed forces that have post-traumatic stress disorder. We've seen a lot of impacts from the Great Recession in 2008 that left a lot of people homeless and jobless, and with a lot of ways of coping with challenges in their lives, both health problems and economic challenges that have resulted in homelessness and some of the challenges that they face, domestic violence and others. So there are a lot of reasons that people become homeless and have that unfortunate experience. And it often leads to other challenges like addiction and things like that. We have seen a lot of growth in the people that are camping along the Jordan River, which has grown. The pandemic exacerbated that even further. And just in the last couple of years, we've seen that homeless community around the Jordan River grow even further. Not surprisingly, the river has been a source of life and sustenance and peace and tranquility for thousands of years. We think of indigenous peoples that lived along the river and fished in the streams and the river and found food source and used it to irrigate crops and drinking water and everything else. So not surprisingly, we have a lot of individuals that find peace and tranquility near the Jordan River, and that population of unsheltered homeless has grown. We also recently, about 3 years ago, had a new homeless resource center that was developed right at the bank of the Jordan River in South Salt Lake near 33rd South. And although that's been a great asset to the community, it's also operating at capacity most nights. And so people that are sometimes turned away, that need access to those emergency services that the homeless resource centers provide, often find themselves just having to find a place to camp nearby. And so, that's a challenge. It's a complex issue, as you well know, and one that many leaders now, even at the state level, across Salt Lake County and in Salt Lake and South Salt Lake and Midvale, which host those homeless resource centers, are really trying to put their best efforts forward. It's been really great seeing the cooperation that we've experienced around the Jordan River work that we're doing, bringing together many community leaders to work on homelessness as well. And we're seeing that, what people are experiencing and seeing around the Jordan River has been catalytic for communities that traditionally haven't done much work around homelessness, becoming much more engaged in emergency shelter planning that's going on right now, and just becoming more aware and raising issues in their communities around affordable housing and permanent supportive housing and other services, which many people desperately need.
Some people who might be on the river might be surprised to encounter a judge or or an attorney in a kayak going down the river. And I know you've helped facilitate some of that. Can you tell us what's going on there?
Yeah, so in the spring of 2021, Judge Gene Robison with the Salt Lake City Justice Court, as they were working with a lot of individuals trying to address some of the challenges that keep them from finding permanent housing, whether it's a warrant, an eviction, different matters in their personal lives that have led them to not be able to find permanent housing. She's a regular recreation user on the Jordan River, and in a moment of inspiration said, what if we brought the court to people that are camping around the Jordan River and help them resolve some of those issues so that they can get into permanent housing or other services that they need? And so we did kind of a pilot in the spring of 2021. It was successful, and we scheduled working with Salt Lake City Homeless Services and Community and Neighborhood Development Department and the Justice Court. We provided the canoes and other resources, and we literally brought the court to the river, and were able to help people with public defenders, outreach teams from VOA and other organizations, and help bring some of those legal services to help people clear records and address outstanding legal matters that have allowed them now to access housing and other services that they desperately need. We're just getting ready to do another one of those next week and anticipate another season of bringing the courts to those that need legal services at the Jordan River in what we now lovingly call our kayak court on the Jordan River. We may actually see that expand to another community this year as well. There's some talk going on of that.
That's so awesome. When different municipalities will clear out an encampment or the work that was done on Operation Rio Grande, it's often has some unintended consequences. And have you felt some of those unintended impact of those consequences along the Jordan River?
Yeah, and in fact, just over the last 6 months, we were involved with a research study involving a professor and some PhD students and a number of undergraduate students at the University of Utah who did extensive interviews of probably somewhere in the range of 60 to 80 individuals that were camping around the Jordan River to try and understand why they were there, what circumstances led them there, what some of the challenges and barriers they faced. And we learned that many of them came to the Jordan River after Operation Rio Grande because they didn't feel they had any place else to go. The capacity of the homeless resource centers remains, at capacity, and so many people are turned away. The other supportive services, and especially the deeply affordable and supportive housing resources, just aren't there for people to be able to get into housing. And so a lot of people, even though the abatements that they experience from time to time really just move them from one location to another, there are a lot of efforts to try and get people housed or into supportive services as part of those. But we're finding that a lot of people are just not able to get access to what they need, which is really permanent supportive housing, just because there's such a lack of that particular resource in the community. But the talking with individuals experiencing those conditions and that kind of homelessness along the Jordan River has been really enlightening and eye-opening for many. And we hope that research that the Jordan River Commission helped fund and lead will be useful to decision makers as they move forward. And we're certainly really interested in seeing solutions like the work that you're doing with the Other Side Village to help address what we know are really the primary needs for many people camping around the river.
You served on the Salt Lake City Council for 2 terms. You were involved in helping develop some of their future plans. You have a good understanding of many of their initiatives and objectives, and kind of their master plan. In your understanding, how do you see our plans with the Other Side Village fitting in with some of the work you did and some of the work that's continued on since you've been out of office? With is there in alignment with what the Other Side Village is and its orientation and structure with what Salt Lake City's plans are?
Well, a lot of the plans that the city has are high-level plans. The difficulty is finding the partners that can help execute. The city is not in the housing business, even though they have plans for affordable housing and deeply affordable housing, and even financial resources through the Housing Trust Fund and other mechanisms. It's difficult sometimes to find partners because it's not an economically viable way for most businesses to run a business. So when I first heard about the partnership, of course, I've known the Other Side Academy for many years since I provided some services in those startup stages of the academy as you were working to establish the academy in Salt Lake City. And was just so impressed with the work you did. And so when I heard the announcement last spring of the partnership between Salt Lake City and the Other Side Village to bring some of the peer-led efforts to help support those experiencing chronic homelessness, I thought, what an incredible opportunity, and just I thought a perfect fit to help address this long-term need to provide deeply affordable, supportive housing for those experiencing chronic homelessness. It's a challenge, and we know that the needs far exceed the capacity, and the amount of unsheltered homeless individuals is real clear evidence of what that need is.
Do you see that the Other Side Village will be able to serve some of those that are living along the banks of the Jordan River?
Oh, absolutely. I've spent some time with your colleague Mo, speaking and talking and communicating with individuals that we've gotten to know who are camping along the Jordan River. We interact with many. There are a lot of individuals that really want a home more than anything. And, a tent is sometimes the best they can do when they're living with limited resources. But that's what we hear so often from so many that we interact with. It's also clear that many people really are interested in caring for their environment. And, I know that's part of what the village is about, is every person taking a part in creating a community. Some of those communities already exist around the Jordan River. A lot of people that were interviewed as part of this research project said the reason they're there is because they feel a strong sense of community and people taking care of one another in these encampments around the Jordan River. They're looking out for each other. And there's things that are not positive. There's drug activity and people pushing drugs for people that on people that are very vulnerable. And so those circumstances are not ideal, but it's very clear that people want to, and when they're given the resources, really can help and support one another and take care of their environment when they have a support structure behind them. And so for me, that's really what I see so compelling in the work of the Other Side Village, is that it will provide a home, first and foremost, but an environment that is totally designed to help people support each other and create a real strong, cohesive community where they hold each other accountable, but they're also looking out for each other and addressing some of those vulnerabilities that many people have experienced through their chronic homelessness in an environment that I think will just be incredibly supportive.
You recently wrote an article talking about some of the issues of homelessness. Do you want to share some of the points of that article and some of your conclusions?
I don't know if I know the exact article that you're referencing because I've written a lot of things at a lot of different times. Um, Maybe you can be a little more specific.
Well, I think we can post a link to the article in our comments so people can get a chance to review that themselves. But with some of your work in urban planning, some of your work in trying to create livable communities, from your understanding of the plans of the Other Side Academy, do you see that we're making good progress in those two areas of being able to create a livable community for residents who've been experiencing this chronic homelessness?
Well, I certainly see the foundations being laid with the Other Side Village that I think will have uh, great success. And based on the track record with the Other Side Academy, I have every reason to believe that that you will be very, very successful with the village as well. I've been impressed with the team that you've assembled that are doing incredible work with other community partners around areas of addiction recovery and mental illness. I've I'm very familiar with the Circles program. That is part of how you build this supportive community. I've been studying that program for a couple of decades and have looked at ways to apply it in some of the professional work that I've done. And so I know that it's a very meaningful and useful program to help break down barriers and resolve challenges in really constructive and productive ways. So, what I see is just an incredibly dedicated and passionate group that has a lot of experience, members of the team that have very direct lived experience, that know what it's like to find that support network and how to build on that foundation to bring others to where they've arrived in their recovery from addiction. I know mental illness is a new area for the Other Side Village, but there are many experts in the community, and you've really tapped into that. And the ability, what I've seen in the plans and the development, to have many of those supportive services on site embedded in the village, along with other enterprises and community recreation and community and socially engaging amenities, I think is just a real recipe for success.
Wonderful. We so appreciate you taking the time and helping us understand some of the challenges that this that you're facing with your organization as it intersects with those who are unsheltered, and how we might be able to provide a long-term solution, and not just keep shuffling them to different parts of the valley, and find a way to help bring them fulfillment and purpose in their life and improve their quality of life. And we appreciate your efforts in improving our community in so many ways. Just wanted to, before we ended, wanted to see if you had any other last points you wanted to bring up.
Well, I'll just bring up one other kind of interesting connection, and I know a lot of people look at this and say, "Yeah, how do you know this is going to succeed?" Because it's all very new. When in fact, I know you've spent the last 2 years or 3 years even studying Community First Village in Austin. I happen to have an Austin connection. That's the city where I grew up and where I, began my deep study of cities and urban areas, studying at the University of Texas. I still have family in Austin, and I go back regularly to visit. My family's been involved in volunteering at Community First Village.
Mm.
And so to see the success of that project, which you're building on, and bringing your own successes with the Other Side Academy and kind of marrying that with elements of Community First Village, I think you're absolutely building on best practices and adding to that your own experiences of the Other Side Academy. And so, it's great to see not reinventing the wheel, but building on those foundations of Delancey and Community First Village and others that have inspired a lot of your work. I think that this just is the next step of evolution of these kinds of supportive communities that I believe will just do an incredible work here in the Salt Lake and the Wasatch Front metro area.
Well,
So I commend you for the work you're doing and all of the great resources that you're building on and from. And I'm just so excited and encouraged to see you step forward and help meet this really, really great need in our community.
well, we understand it. As we say, it takes a village to build a village,
Right?
and we've had such incredible support, and every day we get new people raising their hand and saying, "How can I help? How can I be involved?" And you've been one of those stalwart, consistent forces out there that have helped us move along. So we really appreciate your guidance, your mentoring, your help in facilitating, and all of the wise counsel you've given us. So thank you very much for taking the time today and for all the great work you're doing.
My pleasure. Thank you, Tim.
All right. Thanks, Soren.